When I first moved into the neighborhood, I thought I had found the perfect place. The house was charming, the street was quiet, and the driveway stretched just wide enough for 2 cars to sit side by side. It seemed ideal. But within days, I realized I had made a grave mistake. There was one neighbor who seemed determined to make my life miserable. Her name was Karen, and she held her HOA badge like a weapon of authority. At first, her complaints were small: lawn too long, trash, bins placed out too early, porch light left on overnight. I brushed it off as overzealous neighborhood enforcement. But then came the driveway. She started parking her shiny white SUV right at the edge of my property, blocking half of my driveway. At first, it was annoying but manageable. I thought maybe she was in a rush, or perhaps there wasn't enough parking space. But the street was wide, with plenty of room, and yet she chose that exact spot, directly in front of my home. Day after day, her car appeared like clockwork, wedged so tightly that I had to maneuver my own vehicle back and forth just to squeeze out. When I confronted her politely, she waved me off, smirking like she owned the pavement. She insisted that since the street was public, she could park wherever she pleased. The irony was clear. The HOA she ruled over made dozens of petty rules, yet she used that very same HOA power to protect her own selfishness. It became more than just an inconvenience. Sometimes I was late for work because I couldn't get my car out in time. Other times, delivery drivers refused to stop at my house, afraid their trucks wouldn't fit. Friends stopped visiting because they couldn't park. It was her way of isolating me, her silent battle to remind me that she had the upper hand. But what Karen didn't know was that every move she made was pushing me closer toward retaliation. Every day I scraped my tires against the curb trying to avoid her SUV. Every time I felt the sting of embarrassment as neighbors watched me struggle, I was collecting fuel. And soon, Karen's favorite weapon, her car, was about to vanish from her life entirely. The stage was set. The driveway. War had begun, and the first counterstrike was coming. I knew from the start that confronting Karen directly was pointless. She thrived on drama. Confrontation was her oxygen. If I gave her a scene, she would twist it into another HOA violation against me. So instead, I chose silence. I became the quiet neighbor, nodding when she strutted past, acting as though her parking didn't bother me anymore. And that false sense of victory was exactly what I needed. Meanwhile, I started watching. Her schedule was like clockwork. Every morning, she left the SUV in the same spot and disappeared into her house. Sometimes it would sit there for days, untouched, as though she parked it there just to remind me of her presence. Other times, she would reposition it slightly, smirking when she saw me trying to edge out of my driveway. But what she didn't realize was that I wasn't just keeping track of her car. I was learning her patterns. I noted when she was home, when she left for errands, when the HOA meetings dragged her away for hours. I knew the exact window when her SUV sat exposed, defenseless. The more I studied her, the clearer it became. Karen didn't fear consequences. She thought her HOA power made her untouchable. That was the crack in her armor I planned to exploit. Because when people like her believe nothing can touch them, the smallest disturbance feels like an earthquake. Spent nights researching towing companies, city ordinances, even loopholes in HOA parking rules. What I found was delicious irony. While Karen claimed the street was public, the HOA rules she enforced actually forbade members from blocking driveways, an offense that came with hefty fines and, in repeat cases, vehicle removal. All I had to do was document her behavior, compile the evidence, and wait. And so I did. I took photos, I filmed videos, I even captured the moments when delivery trucks honked in frustration, unable to pass. Piece by piece, I built my case. Karen's SUV wasn't just blocking my driveway anymore. It was digging her own grave. And soon, that smug grin she wore every day would vanish along with her precious car. The day of reckoning arrived quietly. I submitted my evidence, carefully packaged and undeniable, to the HOA board. Not directly to Karen, never to her face. Instead, I made sure it landed in the hands of the other members, the ones Karen constantly belittled with her iron-fisted leadership. They were eager for a chance to cut her down, and I had just given them the perfect weapon. The response was swift. Karen's SUV became the subject of an official complaint. The very rules she wielded against others now circled back to trap her. I watched from my window as she stormed outside one morning, HOA letter in hand, face twisted with disbelief. She scanned the street, shouting to no one in particular, demanding answers. But there was no one to blame, except herself. The letters kept coming. Fines stacked up. Threats of towing escalated. Her SUV still sat in its usual place, but now it carried a target on its hood. Neighbors whispered, watching the mighty HOA queen squirm under the weight of her own regulations. For the first time, she was vulnerable. But Karen was stubborn. Instead of moving her car, she doubled down. She parked even closer, inching further onto my driveway like it was a game of chicken. She was daring me, trying to prove that her power still held. But every time she tightened her grip, she tightened the noose around her neck. Because while she thought the HOA was her army, she didn't realize they had already turned against her. They were tired of her tyranny, tired of being bossed around. And now, with her SUV as the centerpiece of scandal, they had the perfect excuse to take her down. The queen of the HOA was crumbling, and I was only one step away from finishing the job for good. The morning it happened felt almost too perfect. Karen had left her SUV blocking my driveway overnight again, ignoring every warning, every fine. She thought she was untouchable, but by then, the HOA had already approved the next step, towing, and I had been sure to nudge the process along. I woke early, coffee in hand, waiting by the window. Right on schedule, the tow truck rumbled into the neighborhood. Its yellow lights flashed silently, cutting through the dawn. 2 workers hopped out, efficient and wordless, looping chains around the SUV's tires. Within minutes, Karen's beloved vehicle was being hoisted into the air, dragged away from its throne in front of my house. I watched with a satisfaction I couldn't put into words as the truck rolled down the street, SUV swaying like a dethroned queen in exile. The silence that followed was glorious. For the first time in months, my driveway was clear. No obstruction, no smug grin. Just peace. But the true victory came hours later when Karen emerged from her house. She froze in place, staring at the empty curb. Her jaw dropped, her face drained of color. She spun in circles, searching, panicking. For once, she was powerless. The HOA had stripped her of her car, her pride, and her illusion of control. Neighbors peeked from windows, some even stepping outside, pretending to water lawns just to watch the spectacle. The woman who had terrorized the street for years was suddenly the subject of ridicule. Karen's reign had ended, not with a fight, but with the quiet rumble of a tow truck in the early morning hours. And as I leaned back, sipping my coffee, I knew the war was finally over. Or so I thought. For a few weeks, the neighborhood felt lighter. Without her SUV marking its territory, my driveway was safe, and the street seemed calmer. The HOA had dealt her a blow she couldn't recover from. But Karen wasn't the type to admit defeat. She lingered, seething, searching for a way to reclaim her lost throne. She walked around with an edge to her step, glaring at neighbors who dared look her way. She muttered under her breath, clutching papers and snapping photos like she was building her own case. But it was useless. The board had tasted life without her, and they liked it. Her credibility was shattered, her authority gone. Eventually, the fines and the loss of her vehicle caught up with her. Rumors spread that she couldn't keep up with payments, that her grip on her perfect life was slipping. Slowly, her appearances at HOA meetings dwindled, until she stopped showing up altogether. The woman who once ruled every lawn, every trash can, every driveway faded into the background. And me? I carried on, my driveway finally mine again. I had fought my war in silence, and I had won. Karen's downfall wasn't loud or violent. It was methodical, calculated, inevitable. Sometimes I still catch glimpses of her, walking down the street with her head low, avoiding the gazes of the people she once ruled. She no longer parks anywhere, near my home. In fact, she barely leaves her house at all. Her car may have disappeared that day, but with it, so did the illusion of her power. And in its place stood a new reality. One where Karen was no longer queen, and I was no longer her victim. The driveway war was over, and peace had finally been restored.